7 minutes after 4 o'clock. We'll stand for a moment of silence, and immediately we'll have the pledge of allegiance to the flag. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May be seated.
Someone needs to tell them to speak up.
One letter correspondence.
You'll have to speak up.
Do what?
Speak up.
Sorry. I have one letter correspondence. Wrong letter, sorry. I may not have the right one. I don't have it. I'll have to address it at our regular meeting. Sorry. Public comments. We will take everybody's public comment tonight. If we have more than one person that has the same issue, could we just discuss it one time and be brief? Everybody gets a chance to speak. I'd like to move on to item A before we do public comments. I will come back to that briefly. Item A, the museum on the job findings. I would like to table that till our next meeting. You make a motion to table, right?
Yes.
Somebody? Okay. Table it to our next regular commission meeting. Okay. We'll go back to public comment. We didn't have a sheet to sign for people, so I don't see it.
He's got it.
Oh, okay.
Could I just ask a point of clarification how you plan on taking the public comment? And I believe this is a general sign-in sheet, not someone who wants to make comments. And I don't know if everyone got it.
The way we've been doing it is whenever you sign, I'll read the name and ask you, do you want to speak? You have the opportunity to speak when I call your name. And the reason why we're doing that is so everybody can get to know who people are, instead of just looking in the audience wondering who you are.
Just for clarification, Don.
Mr. President, what I would suggest is that the public comment be made first in general. That anyone that has a general comment to make about the process and/or the ordinance itself should make that comment. If you are the person who has multiple issues with the ordinance itself and have specific either comment to add an item, delete an item, change an item, that after the general public comment occurs, that we will take all comers who want to stand up and bring a specific issue to the attention of the group, and then have any of those who oppose that suggestion, and then perhaps the commission would decide whether to vote that issue up or down as it is presented by motion to have it incorporated in the ordinance. I think that makes sense to do it that way, because if you get up and you go through 30 different things that's in the ordinance that you're concerned with, it's going to be hard for us to control how the response will occur from anyone that wants to respond to a specific item. But by the fact that you don't get up and make a general comment doesn't mean that you're going to be precluded from standing up and saying, yes, I have one issue with this ordinance, and bringing that issue forward. So I don't want you to think like you have to get up and make a general public comment. We would entertain you to bring up line item by line item specific issues that you have with the ordinance. Okay. Yes? Pardon me?
If you introduce who you are, you seem like you're overseeing the county commission.
No, I'm not. I'm
That
not.
whole speech seemed to oversee that.
Well, no, I'm not. My name is Don Tennant. I was hired by the Doddridge County Commission to assist the commission in litigation involving EQT. I've also been asked to assist the commission in drafting a more perfect floodplain ordinance that is fair and practical for the administration here in Doddridge County.
Thank you, Mr. Tennant.
And I'm an attorney. I mean, you probably got that from my presentation. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, will you be reading through the ordinance? Wouldn't it be better if you read through the ordinance and then had people comment on each section then?
Well, reading this ordinance would take an hour and a half. I mean, literally.
That's why we're here.
Well, I mean, if the commission desires to read the ordinance word for word, that's up to the commission. I'm not going to read it. I've read it about 10 times. It's very difficult to read. It's a long document. It's just one of those things. We have published it to anyone that wants to have it. And I'm sure that you all have read it for those who wanted it. And for anyone that wants a copy of the current fourth draft, I'd be glad to email it to anyone who wants it.
Thank you, Mr. Tennant.
Lisa's shout-outs complete.
Thank you. Everybody understand what Mr. Tennant had to say? Yes, Jim?
Mr. President, I would like Mr. Kevin Sneed, he is the state floodplain manager. I would like him to address this group and tell us why it is necessary that we have a floodplain ordinance in the state and in the county.
I was going to address Mr. Steed in just 1 minute. I was going to recognize, the chair will recognize him, but we can do it right now. The chair recognizes Mr. Steed. Get right up here and speak to us, sir.
Thank you, members of the Commission, people of Doddridge County. My name is Kevin Sneed. I'm the National Flood Insurance Program Coordinator for West Virginia. I assist the counties and people every day, dealing with floodplain management problems. This whole ordeal started from a phone call that I had from a citizen telling me about development going on in her yard, basically, and I had to pursue, the information I had, and that's where this all began.
Let me help you. So at least you didn't have now.
Yeah. Okay. So I can, I've got the revised version of, the ordinance, the fourth version, I believe Mr. Tennant spoke about. And when I got it, I reviewed it, and I also had my, counterparts at FEMA review it. FEMA Region 3, Maury Radford reviewed it, and she gave me a list of items that needed to be, looked into. Some definitely changed, some suggested changes in this ordinance to make it in compliance with FEMA. But all in all, I thought it was pretty good. She gave me a list of 7, and that's not bad considering, everything we've been through and how long it's taken to get to the point we're at. So the changes she recommended are not that hard to do, I don't think, and I don't think they'll be asking too much because they are bringing in compliance with FEMA. To have an ordinance, a floodplain ordinance, every county in West Virginia has a floodplain ordinance. Every incorporated municipality in West Virginia that does have floodplain has an ordinance as well. Their ordinance is 99% close to, or how can I say it? It's just like the ordinance that you all had before, okay, that you're going off of now, that the judge ruled is, how do you rule it?
Unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional. That was the judge's decision. There's also another judge in Wood County that recently ruled that the ordinance is constitutional. But the Doddridge County judge says it's unconstitutional, therefore you have to adopt a new ordinance that is constitutional to and compliant with it. So we're going to have to go through this process. To have a floodplain ordinance means it gives you all the right to flood insurance. Okay? You can't just go out and buy flood insurance off an independent company anymore. There was a couple companies out there, but I hear they're no longer in existence. The National Flood Insurance Program started up, I believe, in 1968, allowing cheaper flood insurance for people that live within floodplain. If you don't have an ordinance, you will not be able to get insurance. Plain and simple. If your ordinance is not compliant, you will not get insurance. If there's violations that's not corrected by the floodplain administrator, and they are marked through FEMA, and there's possibilities of suspensions from the National Flood Insurance Program, or, get suspensions and, what's the word? Probation, which means everybody's insurance goes up. So we don't want to see that, and work with Doddridge County here all we can to get this ordinance in effect and constitutional. So what can I do for you? Where can we start?
Well, Kevin, could you also address, please, the fact that if there is no ordinance in place and there's a catastrophic flood, that grant money from the federal government wouldn't come to Doddridge County either if we didn't have a floodplain ordinance in place?
Yeah, federal assistance will not be here. You would have the Red Cross, people like that the FEMA money would not be rolling in like it would be now if it were a flood in Doddridge County. It's not only flooding, I mean, you also got snowstorms, stuff like that, windstorms. If it's declared a federal, national, disaster through the President of the United States, there's also money out there that comes in from FEMA for that. So it has a lot to do with a lot of funding that comes in all counties and states, cities of West Virginia.
If Doddridge County wasn't in compliance, how did we have flood insurance before? If Doddridge County ordinance wasn't in compliance, how did we have flood insurance before? We have had it.
FEMA approved the ordinance before. Like I said, one circuit judge said it was unconstitutional, and another one in Wood County, here recently said it was constitutional. So the circuit court judges can decide, and since this circuit court judges in Doddridge County, we got to get this ordinance in compliance with them.
Mr. Sneed, was the floodplain ordinance that Wood County adopted identical to the one that Doddridge County had that the judge declared unconstitutional? Does the Wood County ordinance provide for notification of affected parties?
It is the same, based off the same model floodplain ordinance.
Well, I know ours was based
as far
off...
as being identical, I haven't put them
Okay.
side by side yet and looked at it that way, but it's the same, it's based off the same state floodplain model ordinance.
Kevin, do you mind if I add something?
Absolutely, Richard.
I'm Richard Carter. I work with Kevin at the state office. It might help, maybe you already know this, but the NFIP program, or the National Flood Insurance Program, was started, as Kevin said, in '68. And the government got tired of building dams and paying people directly. They said, no, if you live in the floodplain or a place that gets flooded often, you should share some of that responsibility for rebuilding and so forth. So what they came up with was this program, and it can be summarized in a statement that says, FEMA will provide a catastrophic flood aid to communities that get flooded, and they will also make available flood insurance at cost with no profit built in like a private insurance company would do. We will do those two things, the federal government said. If the community, whether it be the county or the municipality, agrees to adopt a floodplain ordinance and then enforce that ordinance through permitting and making sure people don't violate and do things in the floodplain that they shouldn't be doing. And permitting, for example, to build the first floor of your house to what the expected 100-year flood is. That flood is one that was agreed on for a number of reasons, what they call the 100-year flood. how high it might get during this period of time. Have your first floor built above that, and you will at least be protected to some degree from having your whole house washed away. So then they said, okay, we can't have everybody adopting whatever they want to put into an ordinance. We just can't have that. There's no way to police it. So FEMA said, okay, let's work on what we think should be in that ordinance, at the same time giving counties and municipalities who have different situations in their particular area the chance to modify it to some degree. So what they did was come up with a national floodplain ordinance, and then they went to each state who also may have different things. I mean, things are different in North Carolina with their beaches and all of that than they are in West Virginia with our mountains and valleys where there's a lot of flooding all the time as well. So they came up with the national model, and then from that, West Virginia adopted one that best fitted their needs. Now, we've got 55 counties here. We've got 230 municipalities that are in the towns, and they all work off of this model ordinance. When it comes time, when new floodplain maps come out, and we work with the counties, say, you're going to get some new maps that have best defined what your floodplain is today, not versus 20 years ago, but today, because development has occurred, lots of things have happened, there's more paving, there's more chance for runoff and flooding people upstream and downstream than there was before, so they come up with new maps. And to that degree, they say, okay, here's the ordinance, and we will send you out a copy of the model ordinance, as we did with Doddridge and Wood County and all the others as those things come up. Then they have their meetings, and they read it. I've sat through meetings where they read the whole thing. It's 35 pages long. It does take 2 hours, I can guarantee you. But, you know, you have a right to know what's in it. And then your commission or your council, if you're a municipality, says, well, we agree with 99% of that, and you certainly have the right to change it. But you don't have, you know, it just wouldn't work if you changed the whole thing or made such major changes that it couldn't be policed, if you will, that's not quite the right word, by FEMA. And they look at this and they say, this community is following what they said they would do, and this community is not, and so there's a violation here, and so we can either put them on probation, and if they do that sort of thing, then they will say to you, your citizens can no longer get flood insurance from what they call the WVONGA program, the FEMA insurance. You will have to try to get it someplace else. And in 1978, they threw another thing in there, and they said basically to the banks, before you can loan money to somebody in a flood plain, you will have to require them to have flood insurance. So it catches you in a bind in the sense that if you want to go get a mortgage for your house and you live in a floodplain, where are you going to get the flood insurance? You can go to Lloyd's of London. It's going to cost you 2, 3, 4 times as much. You can do that. The best way was to do it through FEMA's program. And so for those reasons, because of those stipulations, that's why these things exist. And we're not arguing, FEMA will have to pass and say, well, this conforms to what we expect a floodplain ordinance to be. And if not, frankly, you just have to go back to the drawing board and come up with something that will.
What's your name, sir?
Richard Cart. C-A-R-T.
Okay, one question.
Sure.
You're saying that if our county commission and the citizens, if they happen to adopt what we ask them to adopt, that the nationals and the state can come back and say, oh no, we're not going to approve this.
Well, not the state. One thing I'd like to make clear is we serve as advisors. We're not passing the buck. That's just the way it is. We're not telling you what to do. We can't tell you what to do. What we can do is come in and make sure that you are adhering to your ordinance.
So everything that has been changed or possibly going to be changed tonight
Approved by FEMA.
has to go to FEMA, and they come back and tell us what's best and right for our county, right?
They won't tell you what to write, but they'll say this either applies.
Well,
or
it's
not.
either that or be under threat of losing your insurance.
I'm afraid that's so.
That's why we're here tonight, though. I mean, I've been in communication with Mr. Kennett over there with this flood, with the revised version, and as soon as I got it, I sent it to FEMA. I said, look at it. We do what we call a checklist every time we get an ordinance to see that it's in compliance. And FEMA come up with their things. They said, well, this is not in compliance, so therefore have them change that so it will be in compliance. They are minimal. I've seen 2 pages of things. This is just a few things here, but this is before. We haven't adopted this ordinance right here, this draft 4. That's what we're here today to try to lead you all in the right direction to make sure we do get a compliant ordinance with FEMA and one that's also constitutional.
How many pages did you have that wouldn't have had to have been there?
How many pages was it?
You said there were 7 things in the beginning that you really needed. But how many pages did we have that didn't have to be there?
There's a lot in this ordinance. There is a whole lot in this ordinance. Our normal floodplain ordinance is 32 pages, I believe. This is 47 pages. So there's a lot of additional stuff in there, but that's due to the judge saying this is unconstitutional. You're going to have to add this stuff to it. That's the way I think.
2 things that I would mention is, number one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, that the FEMA model ordinance is a minimum standard that does not preclude any county from having a more restrictive standard. And I assume that if it's a more restrictive standard, FEMA wouldn't have any difficulty with it. That's correct. Because they're going to look at their minimum standard requirements. That's number one. Number 2 is, this is the 2nd time that a draft has been sent to FEMA. In fairness to everyone, this is the 4th proposed draft. It has gotten better every draft because there's been more participation from more landowners, more residents, more from industry. I mean, riding over here today from Parkersburg, I got a petition from the Chamber of Commerce that wanted to comment on it that I couldn't read in my car because obviously you're not permitted by law to do that. But the point is that Kevin has already addressed the 2nd draft, and he reviewed it and sent it to FEMA. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the state had somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 issues, and FEMA had somewhere in the neighborhood of the same amount, maybe 12, 13, 14 issues that were brought to our attention. Kevin and I discussed those and tried to understand what the issue was in an attempt to draft language that would satisfy the current concerns of the state and the federal government, so that whatever we do here in the final passage of an ordinance, that it's in compliant with FEMA, because if it's not in compliant with FEMA, then we've wasted all of our time. So in fact, I would suggest that if Kevin has 7 items from FEMA, that he be the first one to go item by item when that time occurs, because that may well take care of someone else that's in the audience, their issue, if it's going to be addressed by FEMA, because this is more of a directive, obviously. It's more of a either you do it or you're not going to be in compliance, and obviously the county commission is a bit handcuffed in that situation, because if it is truly coming from FEMA and it's not accepted, you're really spinning your wheels by passing something that's going to be out of compliance, and you're going to cost your citizens, from the commission standpoint, the potential of being insured by FEMA through their program or receiving grant money if there's a catastrophic event in Doddridge County. So that'd be my suggestion, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think somebody had a question back here.
Well, I think Mr. Tennant partially addressed what I was going to ask, but we right now have an existing floodplain ordinance, but that is in violation, according to Judge Feeney, of the West Virginia Constitution. However, the existing ordinance as it is, would that prevent anybody in this county from getting flood insurance right now?
No.
Okay, then my point would be, since we have some serious issues that need to be resolved, we know we have a working plan that's protecting the citizens, which is what the commission's objectives should be. And at this point, we need to address the issues of some conflicts from various sides who have interest in changing the floodplain to make things the way they may want it to be, or additional protections, or additional leniencies, or what have you. I would think that given the county, and as Mr. Tennant said, as long as we have a floodplain plan that works for FEMA to protect the citizens by making a floodplain insurance available to them, at this point it should be an issue of I know Judge Feeney had suggested that we set up a task force so that people can really work on this. That was never done. And I don't know what kind of input other than some citizens have made some public comments, and I know, Dan has taken them into consideration and working with the EQT and different people, Dominion and what have you. They've all been in the loop and all these other counties. It seems to me that this entire process is being watched very carefully by everybody else in the state. And the way I see it, right now we have a working plan, but we need a new one that's going to do better. I guess we need to define the definition of way. It kind of reminds me of Clinton, like what's the definition of is. But I think that's a lot of the issue here about the floodway and the language in the revisions that have been proposed. So at this point, I just want to clarify, the county commission can make it more stringent at their own choice. And are they empowered to do that if they decide that they don't want any construction on the floodplain when there are alternative locations? Is that possible? Are they empowered to make that kind of decision if they want to alter the existing floodplain and make it more stringent? So it's certainly not going to make it less qualified for floodplain insurance.
If they were to do that, as a technical advisor, I wouldn't advise them to do something like that.
Why not?
That is, it's like telling somebody that lives close to the river, you can't put an outbuilding out there. No flood.
Maybe you shouldn't. I mean,
I see where you're coming from. I tried to find other counties to see, what the most strict ordinance is, and the closest one I got is Jefferson County, and they actually got 3 foot of freeboard. And, everybody else pretty much in West Virginia has 2 foot of freeboard. So you can go strict, but if you go to something like that where you say no development in the floodplain whatsoever, I think you're opening yourselves up for a lot of lawsuits.
well, what's that now?
That's
But
taken.
again, the current wording of this floodplain proposed is, this ordinance proposed is setting up the commission. And that's not good.
Yeah.
And then it's a no-win situation when you really look at it, it's about everybody. No, you're not going to please everybody, but you got to think about the objectives here are to protect the citizens of the county and how much input is actually being considered from them versus input from others that have an agenda to manipulate.